that big strip, you know, the impulse might be, oh, we just need to like widen the road there, but you can't. So that's parkland. It cannot become not parkland, you know, without at least some finagling or some means of it. So it's just an interesting kind of historical remnant of something which is now affecting us. It is nice to have that nice strip of parkland. I don't want to get rid of it, but it is something that it presents a difficulty sometimes. So just put that out there.
Yeah, when the mayor first took over and John Murphy was the safety service director, I know back in his time he was trying to figure out how you can find records. So we were able to dig some stuff out. I took photos of myself of it. I actually gave us the record, and that's the only we really have of it right now. But we really trying hard to see how we can change that.
Awesome. Thank you on that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with the traffic study, just saying that it is something that's ongoing, and we want to make sure that people in that residential area don't feel like they're just all of a sudden on the interstate with all the traffic. So there are ways that we figure out with traffic engineers to mitigate that. We can all work together on that. So that's item 2, stop signs. So kind of feeding into POK since it's in the area. I've had a lot of concerns. Let's see, Thomas Hoffman, Rebecca Bishop, who's present here, and a couple other people have reached out to me or to other people about issues with certain intersections. One of them would be Linden and Kenilworth, Robertson and Linden, Lafayette and Ashland, and one or two others that my mind is just not letting me access that information. So I would love to invite Rebecca to come up and talk about what you've seen, your concerns with specific intersections, and then we have a gentleman here who would be able to talk about that kind of processes. You can just stand here.
Stand here? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'm here really to talk about 2 intersections near where I live, and those 2 were just mentioned. They are Linden, Robertson, and Linden and Kenilworth. So right now, Robertson and Linden is a 4-way stop. If you're traveling on Robertson, before it at Robertson and Forest, it's a traffic light. Later at Robertson and Beach, it's a flashing light, painted line, stop signs. Between those 2, just a 4-way stop, very little other markings. Unfortunately, or fortunately, my husband and I live nearby, and we take our son to daycare at Norwood Youth Land. The most direct route there for us is Linden to Park, and then all the way over to the youth land. And so we've done that route many times, and unfortunately have had many close calls at both intersections. Most of the time, it's in the morning. Folks are heading east towards Oakley. They don't see the stop sign and then just blow right through it. Most recently, a week ago, my husband was driving our son to daycare, and in his words, he had to literally stomp on the brakes as a woman in a Jeep. Didn't even brake trying to get through. So that's concerning to us. Ideally, we would love to see additional markings, be it another flashing light, painted lines on the street, just other indicators that we're not relying on someone, again, maybe early morning when sun's out, being reliant on a stop sign where people are also parked super close to the intersection and making it really hard to see. Flip side, so Linden and Kenilworth is a concern because it's not a 4-way stop. That one, only traffic heading on Linden has the stop. Kenilworth, you can go straight through. I would argue, I know a traffic study initially said that space is A-okay, but I feel like it's missing a human element. People want to get places fast, they got stuff to do. People drive fast on Kenilworth because they got places to go. It's also hard to see on Kenilworth because of how people park. I would say Factory 52, in my opinion, is a blessing, but I will also say a lot of trucks taking Kenilworth can make it a little bit of final, like that movie where you think you're about to be hit. So unfortunately, you have to be in the intersection to actually see what's happening. I would argue, again, personally had a close call. Some crew needed work on their home. They had Thomas and Galbraith trucks parked right at that corner, 2 of them, nice and big. Pulled out to look, and there's a truck going probably 30 down Kenilworth. And so, yeah, that's inconvenient and I can wait, but an added factor to that is Doral Field is something that's loved by the city of Norwood. It's used for all sorts of different activities, be it soccer or baseball. When people are using that park, traffic of people and cars in that area just skyrockets, and it adds again to the inability just to see. So arguing that that really should be a 4-way stop just to keep everyone safe, that would be a huge blessing. So again, just concerns about those 2. Been living in the area soon to be 7 years. It's sad that I feel like we're blessed that we live near a park and we get to talk to everyone. And I argue anyone who walks their dogs near Doral Field has a story of where they witnessed a close call. Our good friend who actually lives on Ida witnessed the one accident that's been at Kenilworth and Linden in the last year. It's not a fun intersection. People try to avoid it. So again, advocating for any kind of change to make those 2 safer.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming in and talking about that. As someone who also lives on Forest, I go down Robertson with my dogs quite a bit as I'm running. And yeah, there's times I definitely have my head on a swivel when I'm on that intersection because of the issues we talked about where people just they're doing like a rolling stop and not really paying attention.
Right, and I only see traffic increasing again for a good reason in that area and just to make sure everyone stays safe.
Yeah, and especially with the park there, you know, the added issues of kids walking from nearby going to the park to do stuff. So, I don't know, Mr. Welsh, you've been on council longer than I have. Have there been other places or intersections where there's been issues like that? And
Yeah, a couple years ago, there was people talking about Lawton and some issues there when we were talking about that. And I can't recall who it was, but there was somebody came in and was telling us that they had to do studies, and unfortunately, that there's like so many accidents that would have to be there. Even they measured on the basis of fatalities in order to put stop signs in. And in this case, with the markings, now I think that's something that definitely.
oh yeah, that's like
Now
easy
you kind of
fix.
thing like that, but adding additional stop signs, that's where we look at how to do a traffic study and how many accidents there are there. All that stuff, which is kind of unfortunate.
And for
Especially
me,
when she's talking about the human element, that hey, well, we can see the need for it, but unfortunately, we do have to take steps to that. And I think Mr. Gary and Mr. Moore probably is on a better path to that.
yeah, and I think like close calls are not part of statistics. They're not. I never call the police department because I almost got hit. So that's missed in a lot of things. If you're just looking at purely, oh, there's only been so many accidents here. So it's something to think about. I think I agree with Mr. Welsh. Like, this is not going to fix everything, but adding markings will be something very easy to do and something I will talk to Mr. Zimmerman, our public works administrator, about tomorrow. I'm going to see him in person, so I'll ask him like what kind of timeline would be to get some stripes on there. That's something that has been done other places fairly recently.
And I've seen in some communities that have like reflectors
Mm-hmm.
on top of stop signs, just
Right.
anything to catch
Catch the attention.
your eye a little bit more. I doubt those are too awfully expensive.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. James, you had a.
No, I just wanted to say, you know, those close calls mean a lot, you know, especially when we're traveling with our children. So I'm not sure, you know, the engineers coming in and doing their thing, and I know the surveying, but Mr. Kelsh knows that Hopkins, prior to my house fire, Hopkins and Ivanhoe is, I mean, I've personally witnessed and had to go aid on 2 of those before the police showed up. That was just it. And then by the art building there on Hopkins and Carter, those and those reflectors I think would be very helpful and not that expensive, because as you stated, the trucks, Nick, my next door neighbor has a big white truck, but it goes right up to where the stop sign. So you can't see it fast enough to respond. And then the folks coming down Carter, I mean, they just think it's just
Earl, I know there's laws in place.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
that's some
Our ordinance
enforcement
is
issue.
actually 30 feet.
Yes.
So I can tell you in Ward 1, that is not the case.
Yeah.
Those,
Yeah,
especially
that's-
on Carter.
So
Yeah.
that's another thing we can ask about is better enforcement of those laws, or adding signs saying no parking from here to corner. That usually, I mean,
That'll deter.
that's a
It does
deterrent.
sound- I also think painting curbs, like
Yeah,
people look for the
Yes.
yellow curb, and
Yeah.
then if you don't see it, if you're looking down, you don't see the sign, and I think that could help.
Yeah, I think all those are quality things that we can really kind of manage on our own. In the meantime, with doing kind of traffic study that's gonna be lengthy. So, there's things we're getting done, if it's all gonna be the cumulative little steps that make it kind of safer. So I think reach out to Clint, reach out to Chief Kramer on this one. To Gary in the law department's always a good resource. Kind of just let us know, there's a lot of things that kind of, hey, we can't, it seems like common sense, but
we can't do
we
that.
can't do it, so.
But definitely paint, we have a paint department, that's something that,
And we can ask them to watch the parking.
Paint and at least parking enforcement seem to be the two key things that I think would be helpful in those specific spots.
yeah,
I know people want to park close to their homes, and,
but I
and
don't.
a lot of Norwood was built before cars existed. Like, we're a house that doesn't have a driveway,
Right.
and we knew it when we bought the house, so we
Yeah.
accepted that. But yeah, just making sure the whole area is safer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's-
That deters
So,
me, I'll say. I
I
will park in the
know-
same spot again if I get it approved.
There used to be a traffic enforcement for the police. I think they don't have it anymore. I'll have to check with the chief on that, because I don't wanna say anything that's indirect.
They met what the auxiliary officers do, because I know just a few days ago, I saw one of our officers and I didn't say, what you doing? And so he was running license plates on this curb. And so if they can do that, surely they can monitor. The other spot would be on Sherman Avenue, right before, what's that little, gas station? It's just,
Allison.
before Allison on the other side, coming down Sherman, there is a sign to park there. It's just west of Allison.
Oh, the
First street.
next street, yeah.
I mean, and I tell some of my guys, Chris and Nick, that way all the time, and you have to scoot out and you have to literally baby step your way to the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And by then,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
dangerous. It's very, very unsafe.
And one thing I'll say is enforcement is an important part, but I think for a more permanent or something that is going to impact it, no matter if the police are too busy to do that enforcement, is having those signs saying no parking from here to curb. Because that definitely deters me when I'm like, oh, this means I'm probably gonna get a ticket.
Signs would be.
The paint, yeah.
Obvious.
So these are things that we as city council people can at least go and talk to people and get a hard yes or no, and then hopefully a timeline for that.
Has there been a lot of budget for even a discussion for infrastructure, for things like this? Is there a readily available budget, or is that still, we should have to go to safety service director, law director, or is there a budget?
You always have to go to the safety service director.
But I mean, before you even know how much you have is what I meant to ask. Is there a set budget? Because, like you said, the human element of it, just knowing from a resident's perspective that, hey, we got $50 in the budget, let's pick a street to start it, or
I think it's probably in our streets budget.
Yes.
The money would come out of that, and we do have money.
you have a
Yeah,
budget.
we do
That's
have
good.
budget, so that streets budget is for stuff like pothole repair, but also like signage changes, painting things. Like I know we repainted the weird intersection of Madison and Williams to make it clear what to do there.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely something that Clint would be able to do.
I know during the COVID time, there was a beach shortage, believe it or not. So I was asking, I reached out to him, asking about Hillcrest parking lot, some of the lines were going, hey, it would look nice with the lines back. He's like, it would, but believe it or not, there's a paint shortage. I thought he was messing with me first. But there's actually a paint shortage, a street paint shortage, so hopefully that's something.
I think it's been
Yeah.
resolved, at least. Yeah, I also wanted to invite you, if you had anything to add.
Yeah,
stop signs or-
I mean, I think, one, you guys all have brought up really good points, and I take a stance on a lot of this stuff of, a lot of times, especially in these instances, you don't need a large fancy study because it's more of a, as you said, a human element of figuring out what are people seeing and not seeing in these intersections. Yes, there are warrants for different things, volume warrants, and sometimes installing a stop sign when one isn't warranted, gets people to think, well, there's never any traffic here, so I'll just roll through it. And other times it might be a good idea to install, but I think a lot of times it is making the intersection look more like an intersection, striping, like you mentioned. I love the fact you brought up the ordinance from parking from the stop sign. That's something a lot of places have, but people do. Street parking is like gold in a lot of places, and so they don't want to squeeze in that extra spot, but it does hide stop signs. It restricts sight distance, which is the most important thing in an intersection. You want to be able to see sight lines, and you want to feel safe pulling into an intersection that I have looked at with no one coming. So I think that making sure that those sight distances are there and that's not hindered by parked cars, striping, even crosswalk striping, you can do it, just making the intersection, making people think, hey, there could be someone crossing the street here, or if you pull up to an intersection that's just, asphalt, not a lot of striping, it's harder to gauge. A lot of these instances, when we've gone out and looked at two-way stops or stuff like that, we've looked at even just simple like a center line near the intersection. That pushes people into their lanes instead of, hey, there's no one here, I'll just drive in the middle.
Yeah.
Because that promotes not only, speeding, but also, not understanding. It all helps to enforce the intersection. And so those are all things that I was going to talk about. I was trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to say. But I mean, a four-way stop warrant, if you follow the numbers, is close to the volume that you would need for a signal, which is crazy to think about, but that's actually, they don't recommend a four-way stop unless you get to those volumes where you would almost put in a traffic signal. So those are the things, I've got my notes here, so those are the things that I typically, when I have looked at these, I try to start simple. Can I see the stop sign? Is it visible? I think I just was in Wyoming, the city of Wyoming, and I recommended those spinners, the stop sign spinners. So I think things like that. There are things in certain instances, they have like these LED stop signs, but you don't want those in residential neighborhoods because they're bright and they flash all the time. So sometimes lighting is even a thing to look at. So all of those things, striping is a simple solution that you can start with, and making sure that you can see the stop signs.
Any questions? Sorry, I didn't.
No, that's fine.
I didn't introduce you.
That's okay.
No, this random man is here, and he's
Just show up and
He's
talk
an
about
extra shows up.
traffic. He's not excited about it. Ed Williams with TEC Engineer.
Yeah, sorry, he's a traffic engineer. So he is part of the process for especially like newer construction, newer infrastructure. So anything that we're doing with trying to get money for repaving streets, he's a part of that process too. So, yeah.
How was it cool?
I think that's more of the.
Yeah,
That's.
I was just
that's-
gonna ask if you were about
Yeah. All right. Yes.
A couple follow-ups I wanted to just make sure I asked them. One for Rebecca, we know each other. Thanks for the parents.
Oh,
So
yeah.
is it more cars or semis?
At what intersection?
So when I was looking at those on the Linden intersection, the reason I asked that is because right now, and this is my lead question, is because they're routing the semis through the residential neighborhood. is that causing a larger problem? I mean,
We're definitely noticing the larger construction trucks on Kenilworth specifically. And it's funny you mention that because this morning on a whim, I take back roads to Blue Ash. I live in Norwood, Blue Ash. I decided to take Kenilworth instead of Park. And that was not the best decision because the semis were turning on the Kenilworth and I didn't give them enough space. So I had to back up and make sure they could make the turn off of Forest. There was like 5 of them in a row. That's fine, but I will say they were driving down the middle. But it does have cars parked on both sides. I would almost hazard to say it may not fit on one side of the road. So I have specifically noticed more of that type of traffic on Kenilworth, but the traffic in general has kind of always been an issue in that spot. I don't want to say it's specific to that.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because we've kind of challenged some of these of like, why are we bringing semis down Forest to the neighborhood? If there's a route that we can find this different.
Yeah.
And so I just want to make sure that as well, even when we're like doing our dump trucks, we're like, hey, you need to take this route. As much as we try to route them, no one's listening, but we do our best. And not having them on Park has been a major issue. Even if it's just one way out of Park, because Park was built for major factories. Yeah, we're allowed those semis on. So it just is kind of counterintuitive to how it's operating, and I wanted to ask that because as we develop our next study, we can ask these questions and challenge certain assumptions, but it's hard to do it after the fact. A couple other things, and I thought about the TEC conversation as well. We've done this, we've proposed in certain areas like where we all fit parking on different sides of the streets. It is tough when neighborhoods have no parking at all, if there's no driveways. The other thing is you can always stripe to make people more efficient in their parking, so there's not really bad parking jobs. And then as you said, the last 30 feet, if there's a problem intersecting, you can strike that as a no parking striping. So sign or not, if people are letting them, they're violating it, it's just a little easier, it's just peak. So, but yeah, we definitely, if there's things that we can challenge as we do this, I'm all for it. We just couldn't get to the level because it didn't ever hit factory levels in capacity.
Right.
But we definitely would love to challenge certain things like camping and other semis. You know, our neighbors asking us too. If we all go together and say we want to do this, what does that look like? So, because I don't see how at some point you'll have something in front of our property. I don't know how to continue in our life, but we can't get to that level yet. So,
It's like the chicken and egg
yeah.
kind of thing.
But again, I just want to make sure I covered those. If it is certain things like that, the more we know before we start it, the more we can ask.
Another thing to consider, it's a much bigger deal and hassle, but it's something we've talked about in previous councils, is constructing one-way streets in certain areas. It cuts down on cross traffic in that way, and it means, I can't tell you how many streets in Norwood do you know that you gotta play the waving game and pull into
Yeah.
behind parked cars so somebody can get through, and we do it every day, and everybody waves, and we're all nice that way. But when you have more one-way streets, that's no longer an issue on cars. You can still have cars parked on both sides, they just have to face in one direction. It takes a big change of behavior, and it needs to make sense, but it's something that I think we can look into as well.
Yeah, the study's not going to come up with that. You almost have to challenge that up front and say, if we did this,
Yeah,
would that work?
Right.
I will say that's great that you're doing a follow-up study, because that is a really hard thing to. No one ever does a follow-up study to like, hey, we did a traffic impact study for Sullivan, and we think all the traffic's going to go this way. There's not a lot of times that there's a follow-up study, so that's great to actually see were the assumptions correct and where the problem is actually at, not where we thought that they would be.
Because you can never account for human behavior, even if you try. Anyone else have any other comments about stop signs and such? I know that there are other intersections that other people have brought up, especially like Lafayette and Ashland. I've been approached several times about that one. Candace, another council person, was talking to the safety service director about possibly putting a mirror at that intersection, maybe easier to see. If you've ever been down Ashland as you're crossing Lafayette, it's one of those intersections where it's kind of at a weird angle. You have to go basically turn all the way around to see at other side. So the thought was at least adding like some sort of mirror to make it easier for you to see cars coming. Because like at the other intersections, there may not be as many accidents there, but there's certainly near misses. And as someone who drives through the intersection every other day, it feels uncomfortable just driving through. So I just want to say that because I know the people who talked about that weren't able to be here, so I mentioned that I do remember that. So if you're watching this.
I have one other last thing I actually mention as well, because we are going to release this, I think, at next month's meeting.
Yes.
But I didn't tell everybody I was going to comment on this. We talked about stop signs and stop lights.
Mm-hmm.
So as we're bringing the quality in down, we're looking at traffic patterns over there, and we are going to do a public forum for the people in the immediately surrounding streets. Primarily because right now, with the one-way streets only going out, it's an issue with the fire department. We've talked to them about how they're accessing it. We definitely want to put retail there. If it's a city, definitely wants retail along the street. But if we have no way to access it with the one-way streets, we're going to have to think of those traffic patterns as well. So I think we just want to put it on everybody's radar that we're exploring that. We're going to do some public engagement, and then later this is fully planned. We are funding this infrastructure as part of our deal. So I just want everybody, do want you all to know that we're exploring that there. TDC has seen some of our preliminary questions, and we're going to work with the cities and leaders to the best program in the intersection.
Yeah, that's something that there is going to be a public hearing here, I think, in February. I got
They're working on schedule, is all I heard. So.
Yeah, so we're figuring out a schedule for that. So that's something that'll be announced, and if people have input about that, if you live in Ward 1, especially Maple, Clown, Elm Avenue, all of those streets there, if you're interested in that.
That's what we're for, but it should be
Yeah, it is weird. As soon as I said that, I'm like, this is one of those weird thinky times. So Ward 4/Ward 9. Just like Ward 3 is weirdly where Ward 2 should be. Alright. Anything else with those two agenda items? Alright. I'm hoping here in the next couple months I'll be able to update people on some of the new infrastructure stuff that ODOT has coming down the pike. It's good. Since it's not on the agenda, I don't want to get into it too much, but thank you all so much for coming and talking about this issue. I'm hoping that we can make some progress on it here fairly quickly, especially with the stuff. So with that, I guess we'll adjourn.